Okay. Oh, yeah, I see it. The content of this meeting is sent to you.
Oh, you can see it on your side.
Yeah. Well, I think I have to say, okay.
There we go.
Oh, yeah, I see it. The content of this meeting is sent to you.
Oh, you can see it on your side.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I
Hey,
think I have to say, okay.
So we're live
Oh, yeah, I
already.
see it. The content of this meeting is sent to you.
We are
Oh, you
live.
can see it on your side. Yeah. Is it,
So,
do you
so
hear
good
that? It's like,
evening. We are live, Nelly. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Latinos Homeschooling live stream, weekly live stream. Last week we were here on Tuesday, today on Monday. So we're trying to figure out what day works best for people to join in and meet us. So thank you for working with us. But every week we are going to go live and we are going to meet with either moms who have homeschooling stories they would like to share and encouragement or experts in a certain subject. And today we have Nelly, who has been our art instructor for the last maybe 6 months, right? Because you started in the summertime and then you had a class, you hosted a class for us in the fall. And I met you, Nelly, earlier this year. And I was just very intrigued because for me, it's rare to find, or even when I go to museums, I live near Chicago, to find either an art educator who is Latina and who is passionate about Latino art. And actually, a lot of your Instagram pages, what I see, it has taught me a lot because I mean, I love Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera, but there's a lot more than they are. I give them credit, but there's a lot more to either Mexican, Puerto Rican, other Latino artists that, you know, have done have made such an impact. So, Nelly, if you could introduce yourself and tell us just a little bit about yourself to those who aren't familiar to what you do or who you are.
sure. And thank you for inviting me. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Nelly Escalante. So I was born in the Bronx, New York, to Puerto Rican parents, and art was always part of my life. I mean, my mom was a seamstress, so she was always making clothes, and she later became a paraprofessional and did these amazing, beautiful bulletin boards. So there was always like paper flowers and art supplies around. My father was an actor. My sister
Really?
yeah, so he actually when that's what he wanted to be when he came to New York City from Puerto Rico. He did a slew of like off-Broadway plays, and he actually did something with Raúl Julia. I still have the playbill. He did a it's an old play called La Vida es Sueño. And so he then went into real estate. He didn't make it as an actor per se. But that's, that theater, that artistic side was part of him. And then my sister is a songwriter, my older sister, and a painter. And my little sister loves to take photographs. So, we all, it's like in our DNA, we were always
Yeah.
drawing, we were always like, painting and things like that. And I just knew I wanted to do something in the arts, and I got into the LaGuardia High School of Music and Art in New York City. It's like the famous fame school that you see.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I was like super excited. It took my mom a long time to convince her that that was, it's okay. She thought like you're gonna be dancing on the tables all the time, like in like in the show. And I'm like, no, mommy, we do art. I mean, we do like academic schooling as well. But but I still at that point didn't know if I can, make it as an artist, as a career. And it wasn't until my senior year in LaGuardia that we had to take an art history course. All art majors had to take an art history course, and like that was it. That was like, oh my God, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to work in a museum. I want to be surrounded by art. And that's how it happened. I'm one of those few people that knew exactly what they wanted to do when they entered college, which is why I probably graduated in 4 years, because I was just like very like I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I got an internship too at El Museo del Barrio, which helped because my art history trajectory, my art history education was extremely Eurocentric. And so when I got the internship at El Museo del Barrio while I was working, um, it just opened up my world to Latino art. And I was just like, oh my God, like, if I didn't have that experience, I wouldn't have known that there was a Latino art history, that there's a Puerto Rican art history. And I learned about 18th, 19th, 20th contemporary Latino artists. And that empowered me and gave me the I guess the courage to ask my teachers, like, towards the end of my art history degree, like, can I do something on a Latino artist instead of, for the paper? And so and a lot of my teachers were open to it. And that just started my love affair with Latino art. And I think it's because it spoke to me as an artist, and I came to it later on in life and as a college student. I can't imagine what that would have done for my self-esteem growing up, just knowing about my own artists as I was, painting and drawing. And so it's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about just teaching younger people about our art history. So
Yeah, and when I first started homeschooling, I have a book. I don't even know where it's at. It was here with on my desk for the longest time. I think I gave it to my daughter. We purchased an art history book as part of our curriculum. And the sad thing is, Nelly, I didn't even question or even look for Latino artists in there, and there aren't any. There aren't in that book. But I'm like, and it's just even with our culture, we don't even question we just, you know what I mean? Why we're not being represented or why other cultures aren't learning about us, what we do, what contributions we have made to the art world.
exactly. I mean, I think it was that experience, that internship that that empowered me. Because if not, I would have been just like, oh, I would have just gone through my art history education without knowing anything about my own art history, and that was it, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. But it was that it was like a pivotal moment in my journey that really just like, oh wow, like there's more. There's more than just. And don't get me wrong, like I love the Impressionists, like I
Yeah.
love Monet, I love Renoir, like I love all of those artists. But it's about adding voices, right? It's about just completing that picture, and that there's so much more art out there to be enjoyed, especially from our own culture. So
Yeah. And you taught, was this your first time teaching? And you taught two classes for us. Can you tell me about the class in the summer? How was it? Was it one of your first time teaching Latino children about Latino art? Or did you do that already in the Museo del Barrio?
I did do that at El Museo del Barrio. So I was in the curatorial department at El Museo del Barrio, curatorial assistant. But in those small museums, you do everything. And so I
Yeah.
was called to do a tour and to start doing tours. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I never thought, I thought I would be more of a curator. And that opened up kind of a whole new world. And I realized, wow, I love interacting with the public and connecting with the public about the art in the galleries. And so, no, so it wasn't my first time. Then I started giving more and more tours at El Museo del Barrio to everyone who came, but including Latino children. But this was different because it was over Zoom. It was the first time I've done it over Zoom. And so I didn't know exactly how it would turn out. It turned out wonderfully, I think. And I did get some good feedback. And it was also like with their parents, mostly the moms. And so
Mhm.
that doesn't always happen when I do tours, when I was doing tours in the galleries where it was a school group that came. And it was like a one-shot deal. This was a series of 4 classes, 4 weeks, and it was with the parents, and the parents had the option of, if they needed to do something too, they didn't have to stay, but some of them did stay. So it was nice to see that interaction between the moms and their student, and just enjoying the art and a moment together, like they were both learning together. And
Mm,
so that was cool to see. And we call that in museum education collective looking. You
okay.
know, when I'm looking at facilitating a program in a museum, I try, even though I'm the facilitator, I have all this knowledge. There's a lot that there are things that I could learn from participants about the work of art that I would have never known. And I become in that moment a co-learner. Like we're looking at this work collectively. We're trying to figure it out. And then I add information that I have. But then the student, becomes the owner of some information too, and they give back. And I saw that happening when we were looking at works of art together in the class. So it was just like I learned a lot about Minecraft. First of
Really?
I did, and that was so much fun because I had, my kids are older, so they don't play video games anymore, really. And so it gave me a new window into some of the works of art because some of them was saying, oh, like this is like Minecraft, like, the different worlds. And I was like, it forced me to go down a rabbit hole. I was like, I need to go and look up Minecraft. And so I learned so much from them. And also, we talked about four different artists from four different Latin American countries. So we had an artist from Puerto Rico, Francisco Oyer, Fernando Botero from Colombia. We talked about Carmen Lomas Garza from Mexico and Marisol Escobar, who's a Venezuelan American. And Carmen Lomas Garza is Mexican American. And particularly with Carmen Lomas Garza, we talked about that work, La Tamalada, which we
Yeah.
talked
I
about
saw them.
in the group. And so that was fun because, I'm not Mexican, I'm Puerto Rican. But the Mexicans in the group were, and even though I've never made tamales, I've eaten tamales, but I didn't have that lived experience. And so they were sharing like, oh, this is how we make it, and it is like the picture, and we all have a job, and or some of us, are not involved. It's just my tias who do it. And so we learn about, in these classes, I learned about this Mexican tradition. The Mexicans learned about a Puerto Rican plátanos. There was a picture of plátanos amarillos by Francisco Oyer. So there was like this cross learning as well. And it was so much fun because it also like with students, with younger students and not old adults, which I lately I've been doing a lot of programs with adults in the museums. They just it's just they just go on and on about the work of art. Como le sacan el jugo al arte. Like they take all the juice out of the work of art. They just pick it apart, and the conversation could go on and on and on. I had to like cut it off after a certain while.
That's awesome because a lot of times also, as Latinos, they may feel intimidated sometimes to go to museums and actually interpret a piece of art. But right now it's in a really comfortable, encouraging space where there's no wrong answer. Like, let's
Right.
talk about this art. And I like how you brought up the tamadera, and a lot of people were very honest. They're like, well, I would be the one not helping, I would be outside doing something else. But I but you could probably relate. I don't know how it is with pasteles if the same thing happens where you gather several generations to help and to teach the younger generations how to do it, because really that's the that is what the goal is cooking is very important, food is important, and even how we honor our food. My husband was actually talking about this last night because he was saying that some food has been around in so many generations of our culture, and it's just our duty to teach the incoming. But that's awesome how that discussion, just even memories just opened up. Like, I remember you posted something. It was two people sitting on a couch having coffee and cake, right?
Yeah, by Nikki Hano. Yes, one of
Yeah.
my favorites. Yeah, you mentioned, that idea, right? That if it's the same with pasteles, it is. I have to say that I never, my mom would do that mostly with her sister, like with her family. I was kind of like never involved with the cooking. I don't cook very well. And it's just not part of like, my mom would just kind of like do all the cooking and one of my sisters loved cooking and was always in the kitchen, but I was okay like not being in the kitchen, which is actually one of my points with why we need to incorporate Latino art, right? Because not all of us enter our Latinidad through the same thing, right? A lot of people enter it through the food. Some people enter it through music, through dancing. And growing up in church, I never really like we never like had dancing parties or anything like that or the music. And for me, my like Puerto Ricanness came from knowing my Puerto Rican art history and speaking the language. Like those are the two things. But we all come into our Latinidad in just different ways. And art is one of them, and are there are some kids that will be more open to learning about their history through art, which is
Mhm.
one of the reasons why I'm like so passionate because that's what happened to me. And I guess it's a very personal thing, I just for me like knowing about who I was and my identity and my history, it came through art. I mentioned to you before we started recording that I'm doing this online course about Puerto Rican art history. So like the three Puerto Rican painters. It's going to be a very mini course. But one of the painters is Jose Campeche from the 18th century. And, I learned so much about 18th century Puerto Rico through his painting.
Wow.
And actually, we have a record of 18th century Puerto Rico because he painted. There's not the literature at that time was not it was more like 19th century literature where Puerto Rican literature where they started talking more about Puerto Rican history. In the 18th century, it wasn't much so, but it was through his paintings. And so that, it's one of the reasons why, it's important to incorporate some of our art history because it's just a window to the history of our people. So yeah.
That's wow. I mean, because of an artist, it's like he illustrated, he didn't write about it. He did what talent he had. And actually for somebody who and that just opens so much doors to people to learn about this history, just and even together. And some people, the good thing is like some people might see something in the piece of art that another person doesn't see, or interpret it as another way, which is really, really cool,
Happens all the time. Like and it happened during the classes that I did. It was just like, oh wow, I didn't see that all the way in the corner. Like it's because I can stare at a work of art for a long time, but it's not until when someone else sees something, like it's very possible someone else sees something that I don't see, or they have a question that I never thought of.
Mhm.
That's why I love this idea of co-learning, collective looking. And it doesn't mean that you don't study. It doesn't mean it just means that you're there's a sense of wonder in looking at a work of art where you're just all like in awe and just picking it apart together. There's just like a fun, you
Yeah.
know, uh, that's not the right word, but yeah, like fun, like just it's a light time, and it's one of the reasons why I think like it's a win-win. Like if especially with the homeschooling community, if you're thinking think about a particular subject and you're teaching a particular subject, it's really great to just look up. You can Google a work of art from the same time period and it opens up just a different window, and it's a kind of like it's I'm hoping that I can make it that it's accessible, right, that it's not like intimidating. You're just looking at a picture and seeing how it relates to the time period. And so yeah, it's one of the reasons why I think it's a win-win. And it's just I think we take it very seriously sometimes. And what I'm trying to do is to demystify art history, not make it so, like you have to be an expert.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of information out there where you can, get the knowledge and the information through websites, through books. Um, yeah, so I'm just that's really my hope, just, making art accessible to everybody.
And I'm fortunate enough to live near Chicago where we have so many museums, and um we've been members of a lot of them. You know, one year we'll decide to become a member of the science museum, the field, and then sometimes we have been members of the art museum. But then I found out that my kids can get in for free if with one paid adult entry. I'm like, well, I'm not gonna become a member anymore. You know,
Right,
we'll
right.
just go. I don't mind supporting them either, but
Sure. Oh,
as
whatever
a
works.
homeschool mom, I didn't realize there were so many discounts out there. So that's I'm taking advantage of it. And what but we've been going for a very long time to that museum. But the Art Institute of Chicago is also has a university there. So it's you know, people my daughter this past actually I'm thinking it's last year, but earlier this year she took a class there, I think it was a 10-week high school class, and she was at first she was intimidated to do it, but then when we started buying the supplies and everything, she got so excited. You know, she's like, I'm an art student. She's walking with her portfolio
Oh, that's so
case
cool.
and you know, but but she was also given the opportunity to go to the museum with her class and the same thing. And I asked her, well, do you join in the discussion? She was like, no, you know, I'm kind of shy. And I think now she feels a lot more confident, but she said, I want to go back to those classes. And but one thing I want to go back to that, to be honest, Nelly, I that's something that I lack myself with teaching art because I don't feel that I can my kids basically, especially my oldest, she started drawing on her own and I never really gave her any instruction on how to do it because first of all, because I don't know, and she just developed a talent on her own. But we have been with an art teacher for the last 6 or 7 years because I've been homeschooling for 9. I actually today my middle daughter goes and it's about 40 minutes from my house,
Oh,
and she teaches out of her house and she homeschooled her children. She's not Latina, she doesn't really teach Latino art. She teaches them, you know, different techniques like carving and doing this or mixed medium. And
yeah.
she tells us everything that she's doing. I just give her all the confidence. But my daughter said, she told me, Mom, I love going to her because her classes, I just feel basically because she teaches out of her home, she said, I feel safe there. And you know, she's been going there for a long time. And
That's great.
but it's not really them teaching anything Latino art, but it just it's basically because I think it hasn't been shown enough for popular. There's really just two artists that are representing Latino America, and it's a lot of Frida and Galo and Diego Rivera, but which who are important, but there's so much more. But I was taking my kids a lot to the museum, and when my daughter was probably 9 or 10, we got lost in the museum, and it was nice to see her guiding us out of the museum. She's like, I got it, Mom. And like she has good memory as it is, but I'm like, I was proud of myself. I'm like, I brought them here enough that she knows how to, you know, to
Yeah.
her way around the museum.
Yeah.
But you
Awesome.
know, what would you tell a parent who, you know, I'm outsourcing my class on my art and but they're and I mean one of them went to Chicago and one of them is here. But what about students that or families that don't have those resources, that don't have aren't able to take them to a class like that? And because I believe art is important and it's not only like my daughter said, it's the way she feels while she's painting or in that environment. It creates some kind of peace. And I think it helps your mental health as well.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
what would you give like a parent like me? Let's say I don't have the accessibility to any of these classes, but I want to make sure that I include this in the curriculum. What are some easy steps to do that?
I think so. So if you are near a museum, and like you said, a lot of museums that are nearby will give free access if you're in part of the community.
Yeah.
What's great about museums is that they've already done the hard work, right? They've already, if you're going to an exhibit, they've already curated works of art around a theme. whether it be a theme that has to do with history or an art history theme, whether it be landscapes or whatever. So that gives you kind of an in already. And
Yeah.
you can think about like, oh, we're looking at landscapes from blah, blah, blah. Even if it's not a Latino artist, it just gives you an entry into art history. This is because they've already done the work. The signage is already there. The works are already curated in themes. So that gives you kind of like an easy thing. You can prepare for it by looking at the website. A lot of the websites, museum websites, also have educational resources. They have lesson plans. So you can even do it from home. And you can even look at the archive of a museum through a website. So even if you can't get to the museum, museums have an archive of a lot of their exhibitions. I know El Museo does, and a lot of other museums, and also a lot of particular Latino museums. I actually, when I first met you, the first thing I did was to like plop in a list of Latino museums in the
Oh,
homeschooling
yeah. Yes.
Facebook group.
Yes.
So I think I'm going to do that again, just to kind of put it up again. And there's some wonderful lesson plans that are on those
Yeah.
websites. So that's like one thing you can do. Also, if you know of I always feel like art making and art history like go hand in hand. Like the way that I approach art making is through artists, whether it be Latino or not. But something that I did in the class is that I had a sketchbook prompt. So we not only looked at art, but we took 15 to 20 minutes at the end to make art, whether it be with colored pencils or oil pastel. I'd love to amplify that a bit and maybe include watercolors or things that people can get easily. And so we always looked at the artists, like with Francisco Oyer, he did all these still lifes of Puerto Rican vegetation. And so the prompt was like, this was very important to him and his identity. What about you? How would you what's something that it's important to you? And how would you do that with colored pencil? So I think always gleaning from the artist and the artist intention, like this is what this artist did. How about if we do something similar, either with materials or with his inspiration? Like this
Mhm.
particular inspiration was the
Okay.
vegetation. And so it gives us a prompt and a way in. With Marisol, with not Marisol, with Carmen Lomas Garza, it was these beautiful images of Mexican American life,
Yeah.
and mostly celebrations, like uh, doing together, cooking together, or there was this other work called La Quinceañera, which was
Okay.
a festive time, and she did a lot of this celebration images. And so that was the prompt, like, can you remember a time when you celebrated as a family or with friends, and and how would you do it with colored pencils or this material? I think that when we do that, we connect with the artist, we connect with ourselves, and it's important to, when we give a prompt to students, that we connect it to something that they might want to do,
Mhm.
not just like a step by step, like, oh, Francisco Oyer de Plátanos, let's paint a picture of plátanos. Like that
Mhm.
might not be something that they're interested in. But if we change it to like, well, he was inspired by this and this was important to him. What about you? And we got a lot of amazing images that way. A lot of Minecraft, which was fine because that's what they like. So they were able to do something that they liked, but still connected to like the artist in a way. And so I think we need to find easy ways to enter into art making in this way, like just like relying on museums, relying on the artists themselves, on books. You can get books really cheaply through the internet, and a lot of old books, because art is timeless. So I have a lot of books that I paid like, $5, $10, that are Latino art from exhibitions that passed, that sometimes they go the prices go down on the art books because they're very old. And another tip is El Museo del Barrio. If you have to click, I'm going to do a video about this because it's something that everyone should know. They do have free catalogs of some of their older exhibitions on PDF on their website. So I think if you click on it, I think it's education, but I'll definitely put that on the Latino Homeschooling Facebook because it's there's resources we don't know out there that that they're out there. And so I think, and what you're doing too, outsourcing, and you said, if you can't pay for it, there's like videos on YouTube, and it's something that you can, access if you're looking for more technique and you have a student that's a very good artist, then I would definitely look, at YouTube, maybe even Outschool as well. But museum websites, I think it's a really great place to start. And it's free, and you can really, learn about different artists and their techniques, and also having art supplies around. Like, don't be afraid to explore. Like, you've never used watercolor. Let's open up the watercolors. Let's see how they work.
Yeah.
All of this is experimentation, right? Oil pastels are really just rich. They look like giant crayons, but they're oil based. And you can do so much with oil pastel. You can add water to them. You can smudge. You can mix what the oil pastel to make different colors. There's a lot of experimentation that can happen if you just on a whim, like buy art supplies and see how they work. And yeah, I think again we make it kind of like intimidating, and but if we just kind of mi mamá siempre decía, uno tiene que lanzarte, you have to just like jump into it and just, test the waters and just experiment. And it's something that I'm learning constantly in life, just just to experiment.
And yeah, I was looking at Francisco Yerdo Plátano. So, I mean, he has a lot of good works of art too. But you're right about the museum website. Like the Mexican Museum of Art here in Chicago has a ton on their website as well. Um, but like with my children, I think I'm not, my husband and I don't, like I said, we don't draw or anything like that. He has an art in a different way. But my children, the three of them, even though my middle child is more athletic than my oldest and my youngest, the three of them will always, every so often they'll ask me, Mom, can you take me to Target? I'm like, why? I need a sketchbook. And then I'm like, really? And then I do look through their old sketchbook and like, wow, you did draw, you did use all
Yeah,
of it.
you used
Not
it up.
just I'm like, when did you do this? Even my son, sometimes I really try to monitor his screen time when he gets home from school. But then when I look at what he's doing, I'm like, oh, he's on YouTube learning how to draw an anime character that he really likes.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I do give him, a little bit more credit. And I say, why do you want to draw that? He's like, oh, a friend of mine drew it really well. I want to see if I can do it as well. And I'm glad that he's taking the control himself, or sometimes he might be a little confused about a YouTube, not a YouTube, a Lego, how to put together some kind of Lego, and he'll go on YouTube. So you're right, the internet has a ton of resources out there, but that's something that I am proud that my children do ask me for sketchbooks, and my daughter just started making t-shirts, and she has her own table, and even though she wears it all a lot because she's proud of it, but I told her the other day, like, you worn that like 3 times this week. Um, let me wash it. And
Yeah.
she's like, okay,
Committed. It's her marketing, And that's another thing, right? This can turn into a business,
that's true.
know. You can, yeah, I did that when I took a break from museum teaching with my younger son because he has autism. And so I took 7 years off, and I said, what can I do? Like, and I opened up an Etsy shop, and I just started, I started selling t-shirts and printmaking, and it just opened up another avenue. So definitely it can open up some, entrepreneurial spirit in her if she decides to go that route, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, she made one, and I don't know if that's the end of it because that's the only one she wears it because she put everything away. So I have I have no clue if that's what her was her only goal is to
Right.
make she made it she's into a lot of rock and heavy metal, so she did make it, I think, an album cover. I don't know if that was her
Wow.
goal. Of course, it's more expensive. Because she couldn't find the t-shirt with that album cover, so she made it herself. But the amount of money that she asked us to buy the supplies is far more than what the actual t-shirt
Yeah.
was worth, but it's worth that much for her.
That's
Um,
great. It's great that there's such a sense of pride when you make
yeah,
something that right?
yeah,
After something's completed. Like I know when sometimes these days I've been entering art making with trepidation and I've just been doing collages because I feel that that's very accessible. It's cutting and pasting. It's very easy. And so, I mean, that's one thing that if you feel intimidated, you can do something like that. Like collage is very, like I said before, just very accessible. But there's such a sense of pride after it's done, right? And it's like, oh my, I made something, and or I post it on Instagram, or your daughter wears it all the time. That's important too, right? That's the feeling you get. I'm always talking about the process in making the art, but at the end it's like, wow, I made this. And it's one of the things in the classes, like after, and we only have 15 to 20 minutes when I was doing the class. And I said, don't make this your masterpiece. This is something you're just experimenting. And it's just, for us to have this collective experience together. But we do show it at the end, like even if they're not finished. And it was just nice to see, like, oh, this interaction, like this is one of the prompts was draw something about your family. And so like I learned a lot about people's families through their artwork, and they would show it and they would tell me, and I asked questions, and there was a lot of crosstalk too between people, like between the students, like, oh, I love you, is that a dog? And so it's just a time of like, I love that art can connect people and bring people together, and when you allow other people to comment on your art. And so yeah, it's just you brought up that example with your daughter, and there's just like such pride when you like finish something, and you want to show it to the world. So
oh, so what are you going to be teaching more classes for us, I hope, in January?
yes, in January, I'm gonna have I did repeat the cycle. I did those four artists in the summer and in the fall, but I'm gonna have a new set of artists in January. So I'm excited. I'm working on it, you know,
Yeah. And
curriculum.
we're going to share all of that with our community, what's going to come. There's a lot of great things coming for Latinos homeschooling, and I'm really excited about I'm working. I'm creating more partnerships. With Natalie, I have a partnership right now, and I honestly have a passion. I mean, what Latinos homeschooling is really to empower families, Latino families. Yes, bilingual education, all of that is important, but I think it's really making a student confident, because it's important for us to learn all of this, to learn our art. So I really encourage parents, even though you are teaching art or have some other art curriculum, please include this part of your curriculum, because this is something that isn't offered in most public schools, the majority of them. And sometimes we only find out about certain things, or certain people that have made an impact in our society during Hispanic Heritage Month, when our culture should be celebrated all the time. And as homeschooling parents, we have an opportunity to basically design our own curriculum and include our heritage in there. So we're as an organization, we want to make it easier for our parents to find those resources. And one of the that's one of the reasons that Nellie, I'm glad to have found you. I'm glad we found each other. And hoping that this will continue to expand. Hopefully later on you can give other more advanced classes to older students who would like to basically go in the path that you're going, and to because to around the country. So but yeah, I'm gonna post here on YouTube a link to your Etsy shop because I love because you during our conference you donated, you gave us some, and I a lot of moms have them, these journals with these beautiful pieces of art from Latino artists, and also your book as well. You have a published book. Can you tell us the name a little bit about your book that you published?
I have two books. The second one is the one that is most recent, and it's called Peekaboo I See Me, Lessons in Self-Care and Soul Care for the Special Needs Mom. And so I do have a child on the autism spectrum. He's actually a teen. I have to stop saying child. He's a teen. He's
He's
17.
always your baby.
Yes, he's gonna be an adult soon. Oh my gosh. But he is nonverbal and he requires a lot of supervision. And I wrote the book. It's the book that I wanted to read when I was raising him. And it's from an artist's perspective, someone who has used art to cope with being a child, the mom of someone with a disability. And so it's just my life. It's just essays, and it talks about like just moments in the museum, moments of art making, and just everyday moments, in church, that have encouraged me as I've mothered my beautiful son, with who has just um, really grown me into a human being. I always say, like, I'm mothering him, but he's also been someone I've learned so much from him as well. So yeah, so that's an Amazon, and I will be putting it on Etsy soon. And I do have the journals, like you said. I want to put more journals of not just Puerto Rican artists, but I do have like a Frida journal there, an artist from Uruguay, and I want to put more up there as well. And you can also find me at nelarte.com, and you can get a free art lesson if you sign up on my email list as well. And so thank you for this opportunity. I think what you're doing, Gisela, is amazing, and I'm honored to be partnering with you.
Yeah, me too. It's just there's a lot of great things happening, and yeah, I'm really happy to meet you. And it's I've been really looking into, a long time ago I was looking at Museo del Barrio. I'm like, when I next time I'm in New York City, excuse me,
Sure.
I want to visit because when you go to New York City, there's all these museums, the Met, even the Jewish History Museum, but it's and they're huge, and I need to go into the neighborhoods to explore other art, and it was just fascinating to see everything that you're doing. But I'm gonna post the links, and please, everybody, who's watching, stay tuned for the classes that are gonna start being announced later in November and or early December is and more programs that Latinos Homeschooling is going to launch as well. So I'm really excited, and it's only going to help families in this homeschool journey and an education journey now for those who want to explore other methods of educating their children.